next riveting discussion is all about, wherein we'll have the business leaders unravel the creative strategies and also the advent of new formats that are actually transforming digital publishing and advertising for brands. This is going to be a fireside chat, and we very aptly called it a fireside chat because it's a very feisty outlook towards a new era of digital publishing, wherein we focus on maximizing growth through innovative storytelling. And we'll have two business leaders join in who come from the different realms of digital and radio, wherein they'll share their views on advertising, the future of it, all that and more. So with that, looks like my team is all set. We're all set, and I'm sure the audience is all set to participate in this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and invite our speakers. First up, if I could please invite Mr. Gaurav Arora, COO, Jagran New Media. And if I could also please invite on stage Mr. Sunil Kumaran, Chief Operating Officer, Big FM. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone? Please help me welcome on stage Mr. Gaurav Arora and Mr. Sunil Kumaran. With that, gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. Bit of context setting to this session, right? I represent Jagran's digital business, and Sunil here represents one of the biggest radio companies in India, right? And both of our companies are based on the advertising model. Now, for digital, it is the display advertising. For radio, it is the FCT, which has been doing the heavy lifting. But of late, content has played a very important part in how our advertising has been going, right? So this session is essentially about that. Content, if you look at it, whole loads of brands have started to invest a lot more than what they were investing till about a few years back, right? And advertisers and brands trust us to create great content because our expertise, our DNA is about creating content. On top of it, people like Sunil, the radio business and the digital business like ours, which is heavily hyperlocal, we also have a great understanding of the audiences, right? So when you combine the understanding of markets and also the content that works, what comes out is a very heavily, highly engaged and relative content in terms of the advertising, right? Sunil, so my discussion's essentially going to be around that. Bunch of questions, happy to hear. So I'm sure in your work life, you come across, you talk to a lot of clients, and obviously there's a lot of feedback that teams get in when they go out on the ground, right? So my first question, right, to you is, could you please share your insights into the role of storytelling, content quality, and authenticity in gaining and maintaining consumer trust, and how are brands ensuring that their content aligns with these values?
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and great to see a big crowd early in the morning. I was in fact discussing that we're having this session so early. Will the Mumbai team and the Mumbai crowd make through the traffic and arrive? But it's fantastic to see such a houseful setup here. So looking forward to the conversation, and please, if you have any questions also, I'm more than happy to kind of take that. Coming to the question that you asked, Gaurav, storytelling, okay, I think it's probably been chronicled to a large extent, the power of storytelling, the effectiveness of storytelling. I think most people understand not just the art of storytelling. If you ask a typical storyteller or a creator, they will rattle out the whole model of storytelling, saying that you need to build the characters, you need to build the context, you need to build the conflict and the resolution, right? The classic formats. So the art is well understood. A lot of people have also now understood the science behind the art of storytelling. And I think that's really changed the game of storytelling very, very effectively, right? I keep giving this example in my office setup. Like when you do a PowerPoint presentation, for instance, and you have bullet points there, you might be a great speaker. You might just articulate it beautifully. You might have the right kind of body language, but you're really appealing only to the language processing part of the brain of the audience, right? The moment you switch to a storytelling format, you start impacting the other aspects of the brain, which is the sensory aspect, the motor aspects and things like that. You drive more emotions, more empathy, more memories get triggered and things like that. And people understand this science now. And I think that's the reason why so much importance has shifted to storytelling. At radio, for instance, we've been practicing the art of storytelling for a very long time, and we've honed that skill over a very long time. So it goes without saying that storytelling is much more immersive. So that much more important to drive people in, or its ability to engage people is that much sharper, thereby that much more effective, right? At the end of the day, what are brands or storytellers looking for? They are not just looking for eyeballs. And I think the game in digital especially has shifted far beyond eyeballs, right? So if you really want people to be a little more immersed, a little more engaged, you have to get down to the storytelling and the depth of storytelling. You touched on this point on authenticity. Again, a often used word, and I don't know whether we really know how to break that down. And if you really think about authenticity, I mean, if I ask 10 people around, they'll say yes, the content has to be authentic. There is no two ways about that, right? But if you really break authenticity down, I think it really comes down to a clear vision for the brand or the content creator. Continuous engagement with your audiences, because you cannot be authentic if you're sporadic. Okay, for a brand, it's extremely important to find continuous ways of staying engaged with the audience. If you remember the erstwhile Google model of hygiene, hub, and hero, the whole model was kind of designed to stay connected with the consumer on a continuous basis. So that's another important aspect. And the third aspect is transparency. You have to kind of say it the way it is instead of sugarcoating it, exaggerating it beyond a point. And transparency is a very difficult thing to practice, not just for content creators, but more importantly for brand. So when it comes to authenticity, I think a brand to be authentic requires gumption. It requires courage. And if they have that, they will reap the benefits of that. And if not in the immediate or the short term, but definitely in the long term. So I think storytelling is extremely important. The formats of storytelling is evolving. Okay, we all have to understand that there's a glut of content out there, right? The supply side is kind of bursting in its seam, and so are the consumers. The consumers have so much options that now they've started making more active choices. So as the consumer evolves, they will start making more active choices. They're not going to watch anything that's dished at them, right? So if I am a person who enjoys thrillers, for instance, I'll very actively seek out thrillers as content and search for it. So it's important to get that understanding right and the depth of content right. So I think it's very, very important to start adapting to newer formats, using newer technology formats and things like that, so that you stay relevant, stay connected while you're doing the storytelling. But the basics have to remain the same, that you have to be authentic, you have to be deep, you have to understand the consumer as well. Yeah?
And from an advertiser perspective, obviously our job is, to help them build a brand, deliver ROI, all of it put together. And I think content now is a lot more measurable than it was till a few years back, right? At least on digital, there's a, the business that I run, we do a lot of BLS, brand lift studies, pre and post campaigns to effectively measure, to measure the efficacy of whatever spends that have happened, right? So, and also the emergence of video format, right? Especially post 2016, the whole uptake in terms of the digital video consumption. And obviously that's the offshoot of that is the advertising's also gone very heavy on the video advertising piece, right? And as somebody who's publishing content, creating branded content for the clients, video formats obviously have, been are being produced a lot more. Would you have an idea from an advertiser perspective, what is it that seems to be working, that they're spending so much, there's so much of infusion that is happening? What's your sense on that?
So I have a slightly different take when it comes to content business per se. Okay, I strongly believe that the content business should be defined based on what it can deliver in terms of business outcomes. I'm talking in terms of advertising and revenues and so on, right? So you would see a perceptible change that has happened in the whole content ecosystem, especially when it comes to advertisers, about how do they measure content, right? In the erstwhile era, you would measure a lot of input measures, right? Whether I'm reaching a certain number of people, where I'm reaching them X number of times, are so many people liking my content, and so on and so forth. at least our experience tells us in the last 1 year, and accelerated more so post the COVID period, but in the last 1 year, the conversation has completely shifted. We are only having conversations on business outcomes. Okay, and the client is not saying that you come up with a content solution. The client is saying that you come up with a business solution to drive my outcome. So if I go to an auto client, they are very clear. They would tell me that I need X amount of leads, right? Now it's for us as content creators, as platform owners, to kind of break that down as to how do I then deliver that outcome. So the starting point is not necessarily content at all. I think, and that's an important shift that we need to make in our heads, saying that the starting point is business outcomes. You will automatically start looking at context and the whole business of context from a different lens. I think we spoke about this briefly yesterday. So there are two aspects to content, right? So one is the content and one is the whole connections you make on a platform with the content. Like, we very strongly believe that today I would do great amount of content on radio, but I pull that out and put it onto a podcast platform, it will never work, right? Because consumers come to a podcast platform with a completely different mindset, okay? So I need to be aware of the platform on which the content is getting consumed, because the consumer is also shifting between platforms, right? So if you understand the business of content, then you will start looking at delivering content which sits across the day in the life of the consumer or the journey of the consumer, and creating relevant content at different touch points. I think the moment you shift that as your business objective, I think a lot of things will start falling into place. You might want to re-engineer the way we look at the content business, but I think that's the future. If you really ask me, no clients are going to say, I'm going to put money, you produce content for me. They will say, I will put money, you deliver this outcome for me, right? And that's a very open slate. That's a very, very large slate. Then you utilize your strengths. If your strengths of storytelling comes into play, utilize that. The kind of storytelling you would do on multiple platforms will vary, right? Coming back to the video question specifically, yes, video is obviously been well sought after because of the sheer power of audiovisual medium. I think most people understand the value of video, but they don't understand how video traverses different platforms. Okay, now look at the kind of uptake that we are starting seeing for video content on short video platforms, right? Now, I cannot put a long story on a short video format platform. I need to understand, again, the same point, that what is the mindset which that person is coming to a short video platform. He's not coming for depth. He's coming to kill time or just kind of, get entertained. So he's like, using his thumb. You have to be effective in the 30 seconds. So video is effective. In fact, the most effective, if you want to put it that way, but if used in the right format, in the right kind of context.
Yeah, goes without saying. I think you're very right. Long form has its own takers. There is a reason why you use that, and then short form, obviously, to pass on that message very quickly, where the attention spans very, very little, right? And I think it's only going to get worse. When I quote my own example. Somebody who's watching a lot of reels actually tends to have a lesser concentration time. So, and the more we progress, it's my sense that the content formats are going to get shorter, in the sense you have to pass on the message really quickly for them to be effective, right? But coming back to another very important point, right? I think you operate in 58 cities. That means 58, at least 58 stars that you have in terms of your VJs and your RJs and content producers, right? So I'm sure they double up as the influencers, right? And what's your sense on the whole influencer marketing bit that has come in now, right? For us, we see a lot of traction brands. So, as a publisher, we are actually sandwiched between the big tech and the individual content creators, right? For us to be, to be relevant and significant, we've started to work with them a lot. So we partner with them, take them to the advertiser, and then create content along with them. What has been your experience in terms of working with these influencers and trying to, put out effective business solutions as you put across, right? And by the way, great point when you made about business solution, that it is the business outcome that has to be looked at. Content's one part of it, but probably more important than the FCT or the pure play advertising piece, right? So anyway, coming back to the question about your experience with the influencer marketing bit and the people that you have and how do you drive it, and what kind of traction have you been seeing?
Yeah. So yes, we have been dabbling in the influencer marketing space by default because, like you said, we are present in 58 markets. In 58 markets with 100 plus jogs, each of them having their presence on radio and on social platform. It's been an interesting journey for us, and there are a lot of learnings that we picked up along the way. So, you know, first and foremost, the fundamentals. You have to distinguish between celebrity endorsements and influencer marketing. And I think it goes without saying that we understand that. Like when Shah Rukh Khan drives a Hyundai car, we know it's a celebrity endorsement. It's not an influencer marketing. We know he is not necessarily a consumer of the product, right? But it has its own space in the advertising ecosystem. An influencer has to be trustworthy. I think the most important aspect of influencer marketing is I, as a consumer of that influencer content, has to believe that I can trust the influencers, because that's the fundamental premise on which influencer marketing works. You spoke about being sandwiched between the mom and pop influencer agencies to the big daddies and things like that. For us, our experience has been, how do you use technology to bring these influencers across market at scale to an advertiser? So what I mean by that is, so I would have 58 markets and 58 different influencers if I pick one influencer every market. Now my client is looking for, say, a Central India activity or Central India campaign, one of them. Can I get the 50 influencers who I have in Central India together to create content for that client based on the client's messaging? Now the trick lies in, it's not celebrity endorsement. So I can't tell them you plug the content into your piece, right? They have to seamlessly marry the content into what they have been traditionally doing. So if someone has been a rapper and he or she has been producing rapping content, for instance, I can't suddenly ask him to stop the rapping and start plugging in a insurance premium discount, right? It will look extremely odd. So we have to find a very seamless way of integrating the messaging into the content narrative rather than the other way around. So the content starts first. Consumers are not coming to look at your ad. Consumers are coming to an influencer because they love the influencer, they believe what they're saying, and they add value to their lives, right? Doing this at scale, I can do this with 10 influencers. I can sit them down, talk to them, tell them this is how you integrate it and things like that. But how do you do it at scale is the biggest challenge. And that's where the inflection point for businesses like ours will come in. So we have started moving on to creating a technology platform to enable this. So a platform which will allow you to brief influencers at scale, a hub and spoke model where they could actually interact with individuals at the reference centers to kind of creatively marry the messaging into their content, and then produce it at scale and then create a whole measurement loop. So I think the solution to do influencer marketing using micro nano influencers at scale is technology, right? When it comes to effectiveness, again, it's a big debate, right? Influencers largely they're getting used as celebrities, if you ask me. And most brands realize that influencer marketing ROIs have started shrinking, because if you start using influencers as celebrities, you'll get likes, right? You don't get deeper engagements. So you need to kind of shift that game. So we see a lot of traction when it comes to our RJs who are not national influencers, but they are micro nano influencers, because the depth at which they can engage with the audience is significantly higher, thereby driving the effectiveness. So I think the game is shifting towards more micro influencers, and technology is the piece that we need to really focus on, how to do things at scale.
Awesome. Awesome. But from a business point of view, the demand has been, how's the demand been in terms of, people asking you for your content stars to go out and integrate their brand into what they say?
Lots. So thankfully, like I said, trust is a big important factor when it comes to influencers, and RJs are one of the most trusted when it comes to their ability to influence people, because they are live, they are there on a daily basis, they become your companions and buddy over a period of time and things like that. So we get a lot of requests to kind of get the RJs to do influencers, not just on radio, but across digital, across on ground and things like that, and we use that very effectively. We use multiple RJs to start delivering singular messages in a smart way. And that's where the business challenge is. But that's what we're cracking the code on that in that sense.
Awesome. So great point, Sunil. I think, part of the conversations, content, one part of the solutions that we offer. but very important that we produce the content in the right way, understand what is the contents of or the business solution requires, and engagement, transparency, and the outcomes, the measurability of it, all of them become very, very relevant when you go out and talk to the clients, right? So hopefully, all of this put together, my sense here, when I look at the whole piece, the way it's moved in the last 3 years has been that the intake is going to go up for sure. Trust, very important point Sunil mentioned upon the content creator becomes extremely important. Um, and it has to be when you push content in terms of distribution, it has to be on right relevant platforms, otherwise it loses
Absolutely.
the significance that is had. That's it. Great, guys. Any questions? Happy to answer. If anybody has a point that somebody wants to ask, more than happy to take it up.
Hi, Gaurav. Hi, Sunil. Good morning. My name is Tejaswini. I'm from Pune. And since you were talking about radio, let me just tell you, I'm from radio background. So I could relate to what you were saying. I have two questions, actually. I'll ask the second one first because we were talking about influencer marketing right now. When you say influencers should be trustworthy, unfortunately, the definition of an influencer today is quite different. And people see influencers as entertainment, as entertainers, and the people who produce or create reels on Instagram. Those are the influencers that people look up to. For somebody like me, or for the audience probably here, we'd like to listen to what Sunil Kumaran has to say. We'd probably be influenced by what you want to say. But then I wanted to ask you, how do you think can we change the perspective, and how do you think our content can make people believe that they're looking at the I wouldn't say wrong, but the kind of content or the kind of thing they want to consume should be taken from somewhere else and not where they're looking at right now, not from the 30-second entertaining or dancing reels that they're looking at right now. What is your opinion or perspective on that?
Fantastic. Good question. Very, very good question. I think it's very pertinent because it's so relevant that most people have this perception that what we see on Instagram and the scrolls that we do showcases the influencers, and based on the big following that you get on a particular reel, you define, whether the person is successful or not. See, influencers have multiple parameters in which you would put an influencer. One, a subject matter expert, right? So you have to kind of demonstrate that you are a subject matter expert. You could be a dancer for all you know, right? But you jolly well be a good dancer and you have some depth in what you're doing. Or any topic that you pick up. Influencers have to have a certain amount of depth in their things that they're putting out there. Only then people will start believing in what they are saying. Like I said, how do you build trust, right? You build trust out of knowledge to start with. Knowledge is about, I am an expert in that space. You would listen to him or her, or you believe in him or her only if you have that trust that this person is knowledgeable. One. Two, being very, very real. I think today people easily differentiate between what has been put out there in terms of advertising and what is really genuine and authentic. And it doesn't take too much effort because people have evolved over a period of time, right? So in fact, there was an interesting study which says that most people view at media, almost more than 50% view at media with the default setting of distrust. Okay? So just imagine that the default setting I'm approaching content is distrust. So if you have influencers throwing information at you, unless you are really genuine and you build that empathy and connection with the consumer over a period of time, they're not going to believe you. So one is obviously knowledge or depth. And two is being extremely authentic, transparent, genuine about, and almost vulnerable about what you're putting out there.
Is that even possible in the sense 100% of the times?
No, it is not. So and let's not be foolish about it and too idealistic about it. But that's really what differentiates people who are getting it better and better than people who are not. So I think if you really look at pure from a business perspective, forget about content creation. The measurement criteria is about how engaged the audience is with the content that you're putting out there. How do you drive engagement beyond a point? I can have bots to like it, right? I can't have bots to engage with it and interact with it. So there are genuine measurement data which will tell you that this is the route to use. Now the extent to you use the route is left to you as an individual. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Just another quick question.
I'm so sorry to interject here.
No problem.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. So if I could
Yeah.
request you to please connect with our speakers offline, if that would
Sure.
be fine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to request our speakers to please remain on stage for a quick photo op. If I could request you both to come together. And we'd also like to present these wonderful gifts as a token of appreciation to our speakers from our platinum partner Route Mobile. So if I could please invite Sonal from IMAI to please come on stage. So please present a token of appreciation for your time and for your valuable insights. So can we have a round of applause one more time to thank both of our speakers.